So welcome everybody. My name is Connie Ingalls. Connie May Ingalls is my writing name, I suppose. And I am your MC for the evening. So it is so good to see all your faces. I know many of you, but there are still some of you that I don't know and I've never met. So that is awesome. Just some announcements. So again, people are going to be sharing different readings and things, and if you're not reading, then Colleen, the gal who's the techie person to help me, there she is waving, she's going to mute everyone else, just so you know. Yep.
I muted you. Yeah, unmute yourself.
Okay, she muted me there for a second. Well, it works. Now you know.
Just a little demonstration for you. I'll mute myself now.
Okay, that's great. Okay, so it works. All right. Yeah, so but before we start, our wonderful leader for InScribe would like to read something, share something with us, and then we will start the rest of the evening. So that's Tracy. Go ahead, Tracy.
Thanks, Connie. So today marks the first National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. As a Christian fellowship, it's our desire to bring reconciliation and hope to those who are hurting, as was modeled by our Lord Jesus Christ in such scriptures as Matthew 11:28-30 and 2 Corinthians 5:18-19, among many others. We wish to recognize and honor Indigenous peoples within our organization and the ancestral lands across our country in which we now gather. Masicho and Walalin. Thanks.
Thanks, Tracy. So again, I'm going to say a welcome. This was not the plan for this year, as you all know, but because of this new plan with being on Zoom, I think we have more people than we would have otherwise. I don't know. This is great just to see everyone. But before we start the evening, I think it's important that we welcome Jesus, the Trinity, into our midst. And we know he's here, and he's been with the executive, especially in the last few weeks. They've been plowing through a lot of stuff with these changes and the restrictions. So I'm thankful for them. And let's just take a moment to pray and just commit this evening and the whole weekend to God. Father God, thank you that you are the creator of all. Thank you that you are a God of truth and reconciliation, that you are a God of hope. You are a God of our hope. Thank you that we have Zoom and this opportunity to meet together this weekend. You are not surprised by any of this. And so we acknowledge your sovereignty and your presence here. And I pray that all our words would be ones that glorify you, Father, whether it's tonight or tomorrow or Saturday. Father, may you be glorified in our words, in our actions, and our deeds. And yeah, we commit ourselves to you afresh. We pray this in the glorious resurrection power of the name of Jesus. Amen. Okay, so here we go with the readings. We have let's see, 13 authors who are reading tonight. And just a couple of things now before the first person reads. And that first, I'm gonna say who's reading first. There's going to be a group of 4, and then we'll do something else, and then I'll read the next ones. So just a warning for Ruth or Reno Anderson, you are first, wherever you are out there. And then second will be me. Yep, that's me. And then the third will be Tracy. And then the fourth will be Sherry Hathaway. But we'll pause between each. Someone have a question?
Yeah, Connie, I don't see Reno or Ruth in the list. So
Or
are you here,
Ruth?
Reno?
Okay, Ruth and Reno are the same, but yeah.
We've got Ruth Dewick and Ruth Snyder. I don't see.
Ruth Anderson.
Yeah, I don't see Ruth Anderson. So I guess we'll wait for a couple seconds, and if she doesn't show up, then you'll have to start reading.
Oh, okay. I can do that. So this is a good reminder for myself if I'm going to be first. It's a 3-minute. You have 3 minutes for reading, and then at 2 minutes and 30 seconds, if your chat's open, you're going to get a little message in the chat. And is the chat on this side for people? I don't know. And if and then at 2 minutes and 45 seconds, there'll be a little icon in your box that's showing, I don't know, thumbs up, thumbs down, I don't know. Just as a little reminder, you have 15 seconds. And then at 3 minutes, you're going to lose the spotlight. So when you're reading, you'll be the spotlight. And then if you're not, that'll be off you. So that's how that's how this evening is going to work. Is Ruth? You see her there yet? I can put her in a different spot.
Yeah, we can just, if she comes, we'll add her later.
Okay.
Send me a message, Reno. If you're here, say something in the chat. Okay, Connie, I'm going to start my timer for you.
Okay. I'm not spotlit, but is that, I'm not, yeah. Okay. I mean, it doesn't matter to me. Hopefully, there I am. Okay. So this is from my book, Rewriting Adam. Might be backwards for you. And it's actually chapter 1. Each chapter starts with a poem. So I'm going to read the poem, and then I'm going to read the beginning of the first chapter. Tender shoot of a child needing warmth and shelter and gentle care left to fight the elements alone. Wind whips and sleet stings without nurture and loving hands bent to find a crutch alone. Addictions replace healthy sustenance and hope, and discovered love withers from pain and fear alone. He was always trouble, his estranged mother sneers in disgust. Unstable, crippled, she too is lost, alone. His life gnarled and knotted, he fakes a carefree smile, but at night he cries silently, alone. He jerked awake, one lone man fighting an invisible contender that wouldn't stay down. No, he whispered to the empty room, his heart beating double time on a bass drum. Despite the tropical heat, his body trembled with a clammy sweat. He pulled the sheet up under his chin and curled into a fetal position, thankful for escape again. He knew the nightmare well. His mother entering his room, announcing that she's leaving, moving out. But instead of sadness, her voice expresses controlled excitement. And when she turns to leave, he sees a toothy grin on her face. Suddenly, he's transported to a long planked train platform, one from the wild, wild west. His mother peeks around the corner of a dilapidated station, that same grin on her face. Her green eyes glaze over, her long auburn hair turning thin and stringy as she transforms into a zombie-like apparition. Her mouth spread wide with vampire teeth, her filmy gown draped loosely around her. He screams in horror, yet no sound comes out. He turns and runs on and on. forever running. Yet the doppelganger's creepy laugh just keeps getting closer and closer. In blind desperation, he leaps down onto the tracks, hoping to lose her among the rail cars. Instead, he finds himself falling, ever falling, never landing. Then he wakes up. He squeezed his eyes tight against the image. Why did his mother keep haunting him? What had happened to his happy dreams? Did he have happy dreams? He did. He knew he did. In an attempt to disengage his thoughts, he focused on the click, click, clicking of the old floor fan. What time was it? He forced his eyes open and looked at the clock on the wall through the mangled mess of shoulder-length hair covering his face. 11 o'clock. He needed a drink. That was a lie. What he really needed was food. That's my reading.
Thank you, Connie.
And I'm going to also say, which I forgot, if after you're done reading or before you're done reading, if you want to put your information on how people can connect with you, learn more about your book, that just put it in the chat, and then people can look at that and see how they can follow you or where they can follow you. So, okay.
Can I just say Connie's book has a lot of food in it, and she has prepared. Are you finished preparing your book of recipes?
Actually, no. I kind of, long story, but I never finished it, but I need to, don't I?
Well, she's working on one. So if anybody wants some really good Thai recipes, sign up for Connie's newsletter. She'll put the link in the chat.
Okay, yeah, because good Thai food. Yep. Okay, thank you, Colleen. Next up is Tracy. And Tracy is going to read a devotional excerpt, and the title is Divine Appointments. So go ahead, Tracy.
Thank you. So I am reading from my devotional series. It's a 4-book series, but I'm reading from the autumn edition, Divine Appointments, daily devotionals based on God's calendar. And I'm actually just reading the introduction because it made sense to me to do that tonight. All right. Several years ago, I began a journey which has profoundly changed my view of the world. I became fascinated with the Hebrew or Jewish calendar and started reading and researching. This expanded to daily prayer journaling about what I was learning. At some point, the thought occurred to me that others might benefit from what God was teaching me. However, I'm not a theologian. There are others more qualified to write such a book, yet I felt encouraged to continue. It's not about a grand new revelation or any deep theological understanding. It's a simple testament based on my own journey, and it's my prayer that you will find something of value within these pages. In the Old Testament, God gave his people very specific instructions about the days of the weeks, months, and special feasts throughout the year. While many Jews continue to observe or at least know about this schedule of events, many Christians feel that following God's calendar isn't relevant, or that the New Testament did away with these traditions. However, nowhere in Scripture does it tell us to ignore the plans that God put in place. In fact, both Jesus and the early church followed the appointed times as laid out by God. One might argue that they did so because they were Jewish, but perhaps we need to be reminded that we have been grafted into that very tree. As a bonus, we're positioning ourselves for God's blessing when we align ourselves with his timing. It should be our desire to follow God's plan, not because we have to, but because it's a joy to do so. He didn't instruct us to change them. He is the same yesterday, today, and forever. This book walks readers through each season of the year by following the Hebrew months. Each day contains a short explanation or devotional, a scripture to read and ponder, and a prayer focus. It's my attempt at introducing readers to the wonders of following God's calendar. I don't claim to be an expert, but only hope to offer what little insight God has given me as I strive to come closer to him. Please remember that the point of observing God's calendar is not to take up a burden of tradition. We know that this isn't necessary for our salvation. Instead, it's a way to celebrate and enhance our heritage as children of God. It's my prayer that as you follow along, you'll be blessed beyond your own imagining.
Thank you, Tracy. I like what you said about celebrating and enhancing our, what is it? Our relationship.
Our heritage as children.
Our heritage as children of God. Yeah, that's very true. And not burdensome. Yeah, just something beautiful that draws us or points us to God, right? Yeah. Okay, next up is Sherry Hathaway. Is Sherry Hathaway here?
Yeah, you just have to unmute yourself, Sherry.
Right. I saw. Can you hear
Okay,
me?
good. Yes.
Yep.
Okay, good. So this is a poem. It's called Farm Wives, Teachers and Friends. Marguerite and Mum. Farm wives, teachers and friends. Raised children in gardens, canned fruit, baked bread, sewed dresses, mended overalls, planned lessons and graded work. They shared and compared in the silent halls after school hours, twittering and giggling like schoolgirls. When winter storms came and closed school and Marguerite's rode home, she'd stay with us. I'd hear them in the kitchen, making chocolates, cookies, or supper, just the two of them with heads together, their eyes twinkling and faces crinkling, whispering and giggling like schoolgirls. Sometimes she'd ask us for supper, and we'd all gather in her kitchen to hear Bert joke while Marguerite cooked. She'd laugh and they'd share a look. He watched for her look, her laugh. We all chuckled, winking across the table, our eyes twinkling and faces crinkling, giggling in the kitchen like schoolgirls. Time blinked and we kids grew up. Old age moved in on the old folks at home. Bert and Dad led the way to heaven. Marguerite and Mum sat together at Mum's table, weeping and reminiscing, recalling old happier days, when their eyes twinkled and faces crinkled, giggling in the kitchen like schoolgirls. Mum moved to the lodge. With no room for guests, I'd stay at Marguerite's. After Mum's kiss goodnight, Marguerite and I sat for hours in her kitchen, recalling the days when they worked at life. The next day Mum would frown, "You girls didn't stay up all night." Jealous, you see, knowing Marguerite and I giggled in the kitchen like schoolgirls. Now they've gone too, and the world is silent of their chit-chat and banter. But I know they've gathered in God's kitchen round his long table, with heads together, their eyes twinkling and faces crinkling, whispering and giggling like schoolgirls.
Lovely. I like that picture of what they're still doing together.
It just seemed like they did it all their lives, and why not? Why not be
Yep.
doing it still?
Exactly. That's very true. Thank you. Okay, so hopefully has anyone seen Reno or Ruth Anderson yet? Nope. Okay, so those are our first three readings. I have a question for in the past, the winners pieces are put in a special, from Fellowscript, a special kind of Fellowscript magazine of all the people that won awards. Is that happening this year? Anybody know?
The first place award winners will be in a Fellowscript. I'm not sure if it'll be in the November edition or in a special edition. Maybe someone else can speak to that.
Yeah, because I think we all would like to read those pieces. Sounded very, very interesting. So pretty cool.
And
okay,
Connie,
yeah.
the first place devotional winner actually two, the first and second place devotional winners will be our devotional readings for Friday morning and Saturday morning. So
Right.
if you haven't registered for conference yet, that's one reason to show up so you can hear it first.
You could hear the devotional. Yeah. Great. I like that. I remember that from last year too, right? Isn't that
Yes.
how it
Yeah.
went? Yep. That's so great. Okay, so we'll now move on to our second set of author readings. And Pat Gerbrandt, I understand you didn't know you had to register, but I'm going to add you to this next group. You'll be the fourth reader. So the first one will be Brenda Wood.
I don't see her here. Brenda, are you here? Somehow raise your hand or speak, but I don't see her in the list.
Okay. Okay, so then we'll the first one in this set will be then Jack Pupchis, and then will be Karma Anderson, and then Pat Gerbrandt. You'll have to, yeah, you can explain then what you're reading. So first, Jack is going to read a memoir excerpt called The Long Haul Consequences of a Spur of the Moment Action. So there you go, Jack, take it away.
All right, it's going to be from this book here, which is the third volume of my memoirs, and which was published just recently. And I'm working on my fourth volume right now. Okay. My girlfriend Josephine had decided to attend the 4-month course Missionary Medicine and Dentistry at Biola starting in mid-February 1961. During the weeks before she left for LA, we talked a lot about our relationship. We discussed going steady and reconfirmed the 2 rules Joe had already outlined for our relationship. Jack, you can kiss me on the forehead or anywhere else on my face, but not on my lips unless you know you love me. Don't tell me you love me unless you're ready to marry me. I obeyed those rules to the letter, hugging her a lot and kissing her, but not on the mouth. She also reminded me of her rule about writing letters. While I'm away, I will wait until I get 2 letters from you. Then I will write one back to you. That was fine with me. I sensed she was making sure that I wanted the relationship to continue. I, for my part, was very willing to prove I was serious by writing more. After she returned from Los Angeles, both Joe and I worked in camps in Chestermere Lake near Calgary that summer. During the part of the Calgary Stampede Week, there was no camp program, but some of the counselors had to stay to look after the place. So Joe and I remained, as well as her friend Ruth and her boyfriend. On Saturday, Ruth and her friend drove off to visit his family in a nearby town. After Joe made a supper for the 2 of us, we ate, and then I took her for a long canoe ride on the lake. We talked about our working at camps for the summer, and then Joe returning to Oliver in British Columbia, and me to Red Deer, Alberta, so both of us could look for jobs. On our return, we sat leaning against the log and watched the sun go down over the lake. I lit a cozy little fire, and we wrapped a blanket around our shoulders. More accurately, it was around my shoulders since Joe was lying on her back with her head in my lap. As we relaxed in the stillness of the evening, a thought popped into my mind. If I were going to marry, what girl would I pick? The answer came instantly. Well, this girl lying on my lap, of course. My next thought was, she's going back to Oliver, BC after summer. Will I ever see her again? That thought motivated me to lean over her and for the first time kiss her on the mouth. Joe kissed me back. I love you, I said, and kissed her again. I love you too. We kissed again. Will you marry me? Yes, she said. We kissed again and again. From that first thought to Joe's yes, took probably no more than 20 seconds. Then it hit me. Hey, Jack, you're engaged to be married. Wow. I had no idea when I lit that little campfire that I would be making a lifelong commitment that evening. Now the deed was done, so we had to make the best of it. Ever since that Saturday night, July 22nd, 1961, 60 years ago, we have been making the best of it and loving it. The end.
That's great. I like, now the deed was done. You make it sound like,
Yeah.
oh no,
Yeah.
but it hasn't been, oh no, it's been, oh yes.
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you, Jack. Make sure you put your info in the chat where we can all, buy your books. So, okay. All right, next up, Karma. Are you here, Karma? She is going to do a poem, and it's called Fight for Your Life.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Awesome. So hello, I apologize. I stepped in a few minutes late because we were actually at a walk for National Truth and Reconciliation Day here in Dawson Creek, and it was really great, but we were trying to hustle to get home in time. So this is a poem that I wrote, and it was part of a compilation by Susan King for this book, Short and Sweet Goes Forth. So I dusted it off here, and I'm happy to share it with you. Okay. Fight for your life. The devil wants you dead. He likes to mess with your head. He'll steal your mind, your heart, your time, your soul, your love, your life. He will take it all if you don't stand guard. Jesus says, the thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I have come that they may have life and life to the full. They is you, dear child. They is all who hold true to the good news. God calls you to a life lived fully and well. It's about time to shape your soul, time to dive in, to dwell in the Lord, sink into his word, sail through storms like a ship on the sea. Don't fret about the size of the waves or the means for the day. The Lord will take care of each day. How do you know? He told me so. Faith looks strange to those who don't know it. Can't let that slow you down, though. The devil counts on fear to slow the steady stream of life that flows in your veins. Dig in, dive in, dwell, bloom, grow, be a light. Show the world what God looks like. Let your heart be pruned, your soul be shaped. Let change take root. Isaiah 61:1, the Lord God has put his spirit in me because the Lord has appointed me to tell the good news to the poor. He has sent me to comfort those whose hearts are broken, to tell the captives they are free, and to tell the prisoners they are released. They is you. You get to go too. You've made a break from the walls that held you. The blood of Christ is in you. He makes a way and love breaks through. God's heart for you shapes your faith. As your faith tilts up to bask in the glory of the light of the Lord. It's about time, God says. You saw the ways I am at work in you. The devil wants you dead, but I brought you back to life.
That's so good. Yeah. When did you write that? A few years ago?
Excuse me. Yes, I wrote it. It would have been like, I want to say 2018. I'm just checking.
Okay.
I'm just double checking.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was 2018. And I can honestly say that since the time of the writing to today, I have walked through a lot of things that have really shored up that faith, that have made me realize, like, yeah, he's not joking
Beautiful.
around.
Beautiful. I like,
So,
he
yeah.
makes a way and love breaks
Yeah.
through. That's a great line. Yeah.
Yeah, I will. Sorry, Colleen, I just saw your note. I'll put a link in.
Yep.
And I do have a few copies of this book. The compilation was designed to as a fundraiser so it was published by Grace Publishing, and it actually helps fund some of their efforts, I think, in the mission field. So I'll find the link and I'll send it to you.
Nice. Thank you. Okay, Pat.
Perfectly recorded. By the time we were in 4th grade, my classmates and I thought we'd really arrived on the academic scene. Best of all, we were allowed to use real fountain pens. At the start of the school year, new copybooks, okay, we called them scribblers back then, but I liked the new name better, awaited us. All those clean white pages with faint blue lines to help us keep our writing on track just begged for my neatest writing. After school, Daddy expected me to practice writing, to produce neat, carefully formed letters. At first I resisted a bit, but soon I realized it was almost like drawing, and that it is fun to make the words float across the lines. So I began the school year with grand visions of keeping my records neat. But mistakes had a nasty way of dripping in. Sometimes I missed a letter and had to rewrite the word. Ink can't be erased. Like my fellow students, I experimented with laundry bleach instead of the ink eradicator that was available in the stores. The whole process was messy, and I couldn't truly eradicate my mistakes. Did I inherit or learn some of Daddy's perfectionist tendencies? A crossed-out word just didn't belong in my scribbler. I knew of only one solution: recopy. I tore out all the pages with writing and painstakingly recopied my work, concentrating fiercely to make sure I'd write neatly and not make the same mistake again. So much writing used a lot of ink. Although my pen used little plastic cartridges, I'd learned to refill the malleable plastic tubes. I think I used some sort of syringe. Spills were inevitable. Sometimes I'd overfill the cartridge, and incriminating dark blue splatters mocked my intentions. So, with wrong words and leaky pens conspiring against me, my intentions of keeping a scribbler neat meant mine truly was a copybook. With the ever-increasing volume of written work, I simply could not keep up recopying all the pages every time I made a mistake, even though I tried so hard not to mar my book. I repeated the tear and rewrite process until I had to concede defeat. I still like to practice my handwriting. Cradling a nicely weighted pen and feeling the pen point glide across a clean piece of paper gives me a new pleasure each time I do it. No matter how much I practice, though, none of my writings can compare to the one book that is kept perfectly. It's the book of life, and my name is there, without mistakes or blots. I rejoice that my name is written in heaven, Luke 10:20c, ASV. It cost my Savior the blood used to blot out my sins, and my name is recorded as perfectly as only God can. I look forward to seeing the beautiful way God records the names of all his children. This is memoir.
Did it have a title, or is it part of a book, just a chapter?
Yes, perfectly recorded.
So good. I remember those scribblers, right? Yeah, you're a perfectionist. But it is so beautiful that God is has perfected us so that we can have our imperfectness become perfect, so our names can be written in that book. Okay. Let's move on to our next set of author readings. And that would be, firstly, Tracy, you're going to read a fiction excerpt this time called Aliens Among Us. And then Carol Harrison will read, and then Marcia Laycock will read. So Tracy, you are on.
Okay, well, I did sign up for 2 readings because I not only write those devotionals, but my main thing that I love to write is fiction. So I'm reading from this new fiction book, Aliens Among Us. It's a YA science fiction action adventure. So I will begin. There's something unsettling about the new neighbors. That's the best way to describe it. Unsettling. That feeling started right when the moving van arrived. That was exactly 2 days ago when the big box man rolled up in front of the house across the street. The one that's been vacant for over a year, which is no big deal in a town like ours. Mining towns are like that, boom and bust. It's just part of life. strange furniture came out, really strange furniture. Not that I was staring, but hey, there's not much to do in Mineral Gorge. The furniture was modern, I guess, chrome and glass and weird angles, but one piece in particular really got my attention. It looked like a glassed-in shower, tubular in shape with flashing lights running up and down one side, right out of a sci-fi movie. It reminded me of a torture chamber from one of those old black and white horror films, you know, the kind that aren't actually scary but still make you jump. That was day one. I didn't get a glimpse of the actual occupants until the next day. In fact, I probably wouldn't have cared much, except that's pretty hard to do now that I've seen one of them up close with my own eyes. She's, well, never mind, I'm just being stupid. I open my front door and hop skip down the cement steps, sheltered as they are under the eaves. As soon as I come out from under the shade, the afternoon heat hits me like a furnace. The weather in Mineral Gorge is hot and dry in the summer, but it really cools off in the evenings because we're in the mountains. And summer vacation is my favorite time of year, not because the weather isn't actually because it's actually too hot for my liking, but because there's no school. I mean, who doesn't love not going to school? Okay, I admit that I'm actually really bored right now, and in some strange way, I'm looking forward to heading back in a couple of weeks just to reconnect with some of my friends, mind you, but no other reason. I throw down my skateboard, give it a push forward with one foot, and hop on, gaining momentum down the driveway. That's when I see someone coming out of the neighbor's house across the street. I make an inelegant dismount. My balance is off, and I never lose my balance. It's her, the same girl I saw yesterday. She has a large tabby cat in her arms, which she sets on the step before sitting down beside it. I realize I'm staring, and I manage to roll my tongue back into my head. She stares back at me, and I nod in response. Before I lose my nerve, I hop back on my board and I scoot across the street, coasting to a stop halfway up her driveway. I flip my skateboard into my waiting hand, a trick I've been practicing really hard to perfect, and tuck it under my arm with as much bravado as possible. Now, to think of something to say. Hi, you're new here. Duh, that was obvious. I feel the blood creeping up my neck. What a moron. So much for first impressions.
Yes.
Yes. He falls in love with an alien and has to save the planet. There you go.
Oh, is that really what happened?
Yes.
So that's a young adult science fiction, right? That's
yes, it's young
genre.
adult. Yeah.
Yeah. It's so that's great. I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued. That's the genre I love to read in. So thank you, Tracy. Okay, Carol Harrison, and she's going to read an excerpt from a book called A Home for Susanna. So take it away, Carol.
Hi. Yes, this is the book. It's the first of a Prairie Home.
Carol, can
You
you
need
start
to-
your video? There you go.
Sorry about that. As I'm late coming on too, because I got all mixed up on the time.
Show us your book again. There it is. Okay.
That's book one. Yeah. I'm going to start right at the beginning. It's a dual time frame novel. So we have a present day character who finds out things about the past, but we're going to start in the present day. Said tears stung Barb's eyes as she stared at the wall calendar hanging beside the kitchen table. A week of September had already disappeared, and today marked 6 months since her folks had been killed. 6 months since that young distracted driver had plowed into them as they walked home from the seniors' mourning at their small town local church. At times like this morning, she still hurled questions into the air, or maybe to God. They boiled down to why. She brushed at the tears that had dripped down and sucked in a big breath before the sobs began again. Oh, haven't I cried enough tears already? She yelled into the empty house as she pushed her chair back hard enough to crash onto the circa 1960s linoleum floor. She left the chair, took a couple of steps, and dumped the last of her cold coffee into the sink. Ignoring the dirty dishes piled by that sink, she wandered through the dining room, and ran her hand over the back of the chairs on her way by. She half expected her mom to walk into the room behind her and say, "Barbara Jane, why haven't you dusted the table yet or done the breakfast dishes?" She pivoted in place, taking in every detail of this room where so many family meals had been hosted over the years. Her mom's good dishes still filled the china cabinet, their gold edges catching the light. Some of her grandmother's favorite pieces of glassware crammed into any leftover space in the cabinet, and a few sat on the top. She hadn't removed the tablecloth her mom always kept on the table, nor its usual centerpiece. Even though she had moved into her parents' big old square 2-story house 4 months ago, this room looked just like her mom left it. Or, at least if you didn't count the addition of a layer or two dust, thick enough to write her name in, which covered the chairs, table legs, and any other empty surface. Barb continued her inspection of the main floor rooms one by one, almost as if today, on the half-year anniversary of her parents' death, her brain fog had begun to lift. Maybe it was the fall's imminent approach. It might be that she finally caught up on all the outside work, or more to the point, helped Pete by doing what he told her to do, since she had not inherited the green thumb her mom and grandmother possessed. Good thing her husband loved working in the yard, but it had taken lots of her time too. Maybe staying outside with him, breathing in the freshly mowed grass until she began to wheeze, or the fragrance of the flower gardens, had been a way of avoiding doing anything in this house she had known all her life. Now she noticed families of dust bunnies gathering for a reunion under more pieces of furniture and shook her head. Guess she hadn't inherited any of their housekeeping skills either. And
Yeah.
and then she goes on to explore things and try and figure out how she fits into the family and how she can make this her own place instead of belonging to her parents and grandparents and great-grandparents. Yep.
Very nice. Yeah. So sorry, Carol, that you came in late and, but, and miss, yeah, I know the time. Yeah.
I was trying to figure out if Saskatchewan was Mountain Standard Time right now, or if that was BC time. And obviously I didn't figure it out correctly.
Yeah, wrong time. What time of month is it? What time of year is it? Yeah. Anyway, if you want to put in your information in the chat on how people can read more of your writing and see your books for sale, if you could do that for us, that would be wonderful. But yeah, I love that line. Someone else commented about it. Families of dust bunnies. Ah, that's perfect. That's a great line. Okay, Marcia is up. She's going to read a poem called Not Sure Yet.
That's not actually the name of the poem.
Oh.
I just put that in there because I wasn't sure what I was going to read.
Oh, of course.
The title of the poem is Mountaintop Meetings. And this is quite an older piece that I did for CBC radio. It was produced on, it was part of a suite of 5 poems produced on Alberta Anthology a number of years ago. Mountaintop Meetings. It might have been inconsequential, that meeting on a mountaintop. Thanksgiving, and you were cooking turkey for friends, milling, admiring the view. 360 degrees, you boasted, offered to show me from the top as we stood by the ladder, sole access to the fire tower. I, hearing the challenge ring up the straight line of steel steps, wondered, what if lightning strikes? And said no. I like the solid earth beneath my feet, but noticed your eyes, a clear metallic blue. Over Turkey, we all talked of Portugal, Spain, Manitoba, Africa, Ontario, and other places with no names. I invited you to visit, and you did. Surveyed my books, my music, selected a few, smiled, said you thought we'd get along just fine. And so we did. Bought land, built a house, raised kids, dogs, pigs, horses, just because we wanted to, took government jobs, fed our winter fires, and in the summers with no night, watched the river run. Until people began to die. 2 suicides, 2 close to you, a pact of violence colliding without warning into pretense, into dreams we did not know we dreamed. Then the neighbor's baby drowning. And we tried to run away, far away, and found each other floundering, and so went back to land and house, to watch the river run, to realize we had been found while wandering, and stopped. At last allowed the true river, Redeemer, to wash the pain away, until we knew there had been a momentous meeting on another mountaintop. And we began to talk of all the places we could go from there.
Yes.
It's basically kind of a bit of a testimony piece.
Mm-hmm.
When my husband and I first met.
Beautiful. Yeah. I like the line, to realize we had been found while wandering. Isn't it wandering? Yeah, yeah. I love that. I love that image. Beautiful. Thank you, Marcia.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, someone commented that "Not Sure Yet" would be a great title for a poem that you need to write.
I'll work on that.
Okay. Enter it into our contest next year. Okay, we will continue on with some more, our last section of author readings. So first we will have Andrea Kidd, and she will read a short article titled "The Willow Tree." Then we will have Ruth Reno Anderson, who I understand is now here. And she will read, let's see, a poem called "Flight Patterns." Then Tandy Balson with a inspirational style reading called "Into the Light." And then Barbara Fuller with a poem called "Weeping on the Waves." So Andrea, you are on.
Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
You can, good.
Yep, you're
The
good.
willow tree. I think a parable is like a window. It helps me see out and recognize something that has been blocked from my view. Sometimes a parable is a picture window, wide and deep, giving a far-reaching view into the distance. Sometimes it is a peephole in a condo door, giving a quick peek at what is just beyond. A parable provides a bridge, a link, a connection to understanding. It enables a leap through the immediate to a reality further away. Jesus often used parables. He said, "I am the good shepherd, and I am the bread of life." When his people were being arrogant, bossy, and cruel, Jesus said, "How often I have longed to gather you together as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, but you were not willing." In the summer of 2018, we stayed at a bed and breakfast on Pender Island, British Columbia. There was a willow tree in the garden. Could Jesus be like that willow tree? Under the cascading leafy boughs of the willow tree, I will be safe. See, the leaves in the breeze beckon me. invite me to sit quietly and shelter under their rippling foliage. The willow's wide embrace calls me to his heart. His firmly planted trunk promises strong protection from the harsh hurts and stabbing jabs of the world. His strength and gentleness generate courage for conflicts to come. He dispels my fears, soothes the pain that sears, as I nestle beneath his leafy spears. Past pain covered with present love assures me of future good.
Lovely. Yes. Huh. I love word pictures, so the willow tree as part of, you know, a parable, a story, how it ministers us, or just the image of it. So beautifully done. Thank you, Andrea. And if you have anything to publish or published that you want to share or offer in books, put it in the chat so we can learn more about your books, or where we can read more of your writing. Is that possible?
I don't write books, but I write an article for the High Country News once a month, and that's going in for this month of October. So anyone can go on to High Country News, which is published out of Bragg Creek, and everything's archived.
Can you put that in the chat, how we can connect with that? That would be great. Thank you, Andrea. Okay, next up is Reno Anderson. She is here now, I understand.
I am here.
Okay, there you go. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm reading today from my newest book called Flight Patterns. And I'm going to read the main poem and then with the very last one as well, because they kind of go together. I must admit that while I have been content to sit in my little office for the whole plague of restrictions, part of me still wants to fly, to be the adventurer I once was, traveling to strange, exotic places where other tongues are spoken, other foods are eaten, other lives lived. Yet, it has been difficult to commit to even a road trip now that restrictions are lifting. On one wild and crazy Wednesday, only last week, I throw caution to the winds, quite literally, and book a flight. To see my daughter, who has lived 1.5 years without me seeing her change and grow and progress, to be the mother that she is, the wife she is, the employee at her new job. And now I sit with reservations made, and reservations within me as well. In 3 weeks, everyone will expect me to be overjoyed, finally flying somewhere. So to get myself used to being the jet setter that I once was, I book another flight for the winter to our neighbor to the south. And in reckless abandonment, I even book a house to stay in for a week. Can I do it? Can I break out of my little office, once designated a closet, a laundry room, a storage place, and spread my wings again? If I force myself to be who I was before COVID, before heart surgery, before isolation, will I recognize myself? Will I ever hike the hills of Italy again? Will I ever live in a mud hut in Malawi again? Will I ever ride a motorcycle in Argentina again? Will I ever venture with my son to explore Bongabong in the Philippines? Who was that fearless woman? Do I still know her? Is she still there in my reflection in the mirror? Do I have the courage to follow her flight patterns? My next flight. Back in my little room where I write, the smallness comforting yet confining. I prepare to fly next week, my wings a little stiff, a little dusty. When I stretch them out, they bump the walls. My shoulders itch. New down coming? Or Remiges? Flight feathers are stiffened so as to work against the air in the downstroke, but yet yield in other directions, yielding to the many other directions pulling on me, keeping me in my small room, writing poetry, books on racism, a sequel to my novel, reviewing the works of others, making meals, doing laundry, vacuuming up dog hair, loving them all, waiting for the feathers to grow, again, dreaming up flight patterns, new every morning.
Oh, wow. Thank you. Beautiful. Both of them. I love that. Well, one, the play on flight, right? Whether it's in an airplane or flight like a bird. And then, and I also like that play on reservations. So you make reservations with reservation, right? And it's like, wow, yeah, very beautiful. So where can we buy this book of poems or any of your writings? Put it in the chat. Can you do that? Okay, that's great. I'm glad to see you here because we weren't sure, but I'm glad we got to listen to those poems. Thank you, Reno. Yeah. Okay, next is Tandy.
Hello, I was a little bit late getting on too. Rhonda and I have gone away to a hotel for the weekend to celebrate and do the conference together. And we had some technical issues, but we're here. So I had this piece of artwork that I wrote to. And it's called Into the Light. Meg looked wistfully out her window. She longed to go outside and breathe the crisp, snow-filled air. Was it possible? Meg had initially railed at God, asking why he'd allowed her to endure this wretched disease. The anger had since passed. Now the brave face she showed the world came from a deep inner peace. Difficult, lonely moments still appeared, but her faith allowed her to move through them. The hushed tones of her son and daughter could be heard in the other room. Meg made her way towards them. Her children looked up in surprise. Is everything okay? What can I do for you, Mom? Susan asked. I need to do something normal, Meg replied. Let's go out and catch snowflakes on our tongues like we did when you were little. They said she wasn't strong enough. She insisted, saying, please, let's make one more memory. They couldn't refuse. The three linked arms and walked slowly through the trees behind the house. John brushed the snow off a bench and wrapped his mother in a blanket. They sat and told stories of years gone by. For a brief moment, pain and sadness were replaced by sweet memories. Meg told her children she loved them and knew they'd be okay. It's time to go home now, Meg said. Her kids helped her up from the bench. A light glowed ahead, drawing her towards its welcoming embrace. Meg knew her journey was almost over. Soon she'd be home.
Beautiful. Yes, yes. And I'm glad you got your techno issues figured out.
Me too.
Yeah. No, I know you've shared that kind of ekphrastic, how do you say it? Ekphrastic writing before, where you're writing to a piece of art.
Yes.
Yeah, I really like that. Yeah. Thank you, Tandy. And then Barbara Fuller.
Hi. Of course, now my dog decides to start barking. He's been quiet this whole time until now. I'm just reading a poem that has not been published, but I thought I'd like to share it. It's called Weeping on the Waves. With untold sadness, he heard the words, "Your mother is gone." He knew how it had been, alone. No visits, no embraces, as she had lain struggling for breath, there among others also fighting COVID. The doctor stepped quickly into the empty staff room, sobs shaking his shoulders, tears streaming, alone with his grief and his God, for a moment. Then stepping back to the ward, he continued his rounds, saving the lives he could. With unbearable sorrow, she heard the words, "Your husband is dead." She knew nothing of the circumstances, only now that she was alone. The young widow threw herself sobbing on the ground, lost in her grief, raw before God, for a moment. Then looking up, she saw her children's bewildered faces. She rose and took their hands, ready to raise them as best she could. Acquainted with grief, he heard the words, "Your friend is dead." He knew how it had been, alone in a prison cell, wondering if he got it right, grasping for the light in his darkness. Jesus slipped away into a boat, out on the waves, weeping on the water, alone with his grief and his Father, for a moment. Then coming to shore, he saw the crowds. With compassion he healed and fed them, and gave them hope, as only he could.
Wow. Thank you. Beautiful. That image of Jesus. Oh, thanks, Barbara. Now, is there a place that we can go to?
I've got a Facebook page. Is that
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, can you put that in the chat? That would be great, just so we can connect. Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. Okay.